Yeah, now I've got the arrows up for the side.
Okay, Chairman, we're now broadcasting live on YouTube, so we're good to go.
We're good to go. Right. Good evening, everybody. My name's Steve Osborne. I'm chairman of the planning committee. Well, I am for, this is the last week I'm chairman at district council, but I am chairman. As you're aware, it's a virtual meeting, it's a Zoom meeting. I'm being supported by various officers, various planners, a director. Cool, very important meeting with the director here. We've got the most important person, which is the clerk that takes the minutes, and our legal officer, who will interrupt should there be anything that's not correct or is asked for advice. I'll give you a bit of the housekeeping now. We'll have a roll call at the beginning of the meeting so that you'll see what councillors are here, and you'll be able to see how they vote. Should it be well, it will be an obvious vote. Please make sure your microphones are off when you're not speaking. So mute yourself. Speakers will have 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, I'll invite the clerk to interrupt the conversation, whoever's speaking, and say 3 minutes, Chairman, and I shall say, can you finish, please? And that's it. Don't clap, hiss, cheer, boo. I'm sure you won't. Now, the normal council rules say that at 9:15 we should vote to have a break. Well, we've probably got the longest meeting that the council has had for many years. So I'm going to forget that rule, and sometime between 8:30 and 8:45, I'm going to say we're going to have a 10-minute break. So we're going to stop for a comfort break then. So you can have your coffee or do what you like. Quite a few bits to tell you. Right, this is the last meeting of the DDC Planning Committee, although there's an interim Planning Committee meeting which will be under the WNDC West Northampton's heading, but we'll have the same members as this until the election. So it would be wrong for me not to thank all the members that are on Planning Committee and have been on Planning Committee and have contributed to Planning Committee. It's nice. I've been here a long time, 31 years, so I know. I've watched people come and go, and I've watched people come with no knowledge at all, and certainly learn. Some people with tremendous knowledge. Okay, some have not quite so much, but anyway, I'd like a record of thanks to all the members that have contributed to Planning Committee. Not only members, all the officers as well. We've got a great, although some people would think not, we've got a great bunch of planning officers. They're there to interpret the national planning laws and the local planning policies. And that's what they're paid to do. They're not paid to do anything else. They interpret it. We make the decisions here in their interpretations. So great planning officers, great planning backroom staff who have supported this committee for years now. So again, thank you. Not just the planners. We've got our clerk, we've got our director, and we've got our legal man. They're all a part of this committee and contribute to, hopefully, the success and correctness of it. Right, it's a lot more chat than normal. Sorry about that. Right, we go to the agenda now, which is, the first thing is the minutes. Is it your wish I sign them as a true and correct record when possible? Chairman,
if I can just come in there, I have had notice of some clarification needed on the minutes of the last meeting. So I invite members to turn to page 7 of the papers. And it's in respect of the application for Barbie, DA 2021 0020 at the bottom of that page. And the clarification is to reverse the order of the first two paragraphs of that meeting, of that minute. So the minute will start with the paragraph Councillor Rupert Frost queried, and then the second paragraph, the principal planning officer outlined, will swap it into that place. So that's the change I'm suggesting to clarify that point, Chairman.
Thank you, Tony. Right, you've heard the change that's suggested by Tony to correct the minutes. Are you all in agreement with that? Just put a hand in front of you if you are. All in agreement, put a hand in front of you. Right. Anybody against? Anybody abstain? That is carried. So the minutes will be corrected to say that. Thank you. Apologies for absence. Marina?
Apologies received from Councillor Malcolm Longley.
Right, no other apologies? Okay, members' interests. Disclosable interests. I can see Councillor Irving Swift put a hand up, did you?
Yes, I will have to leave the room for the item about housing works because the planning is just at the bottom of my lane. So I will, the monitoring officer will kick me out of the meeting, and I will re-enter for the last item of the agenda.
Thank you. Any others, Tony?
None indicated, Chairman.
Okay. Party whipping arrangements.
None, Chairman.
Thank you.
No.
And thanks for saying that at every meeting, Alan. To members of the public, that means we don't get together beforehand as party people or any groups of people and decide how we're going to vote. Most definitely not. Right. Applications withdrawn. The very first application that's on the agenda, which is in Clipston, that is, and the reason being is in the it's becoming a conservation area now, and the application has to be publicised, so it has to go through the system again. So that's the reason why that's one's withdrawn. So that's one less. Right. Before we go on to the first application, I've got to go to Marina for a roll call.
If you can just confirm that you can see and hear proceedings, please, councillors. Councillor Chandler.
Yes, all clear, thank you.
Councillor Cribbin.
Yes to both.
Councillor Dabbs.
Yes, see and hear, thank you.
Councillor Frost.
Yep, both, thank you.
Councillor Harris.
Yes to both, thank you.
Councillor Irving Swift.
Yes to both, thank you.
Councillor James.
Yes to both, thank you.
Councillor Matton.
Yes to both, thank you.
Councillor Parker.
Yes to both.
Councillor Ritchie.
Yes, thanks.
Councillor Robertson. Councillor Smith.
All good, thank you.
Councillor Wesley.
Yeah, all working, thank you.
And Chairman.
Yeah, both. Okay. Right, we go to the what will be the first application now, which is in Dodford.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just start the PowerPoint presentation. As you can see, this is for a site at Dodford Grange, Main Road in Dodford. It's for the change of use of land to bed and breakfast facility, including holiday let building, 2 holiday lodges and 5 bell tents and associated infrastructure. You can see the site is on the corner with the A45 and the main street into Dodford itself. As you can see, Dodford is actually pretty much separated in 2 parts. The main part to the north here and the other part along the main A45 here. So this is quite a big house on quite a good substantial plot. This is where my cursor is at the moment, is where the existing residential curtilage for this site is. This area here is a unused paddock land which has got separate existing access off onto the main street here. So as you can see, this is the proposed layout. So 2 holiday lodges, which are for 1 person, are coming off here. And the access for 5 bell tents, which are located here, which are measured at 5 meters each. And a 4-bed or 4-part B&B accommodation here with associated restaurant or kitchen area and a pamper room. So you can see this is the existing layout of the proposal. The application has been amended over the sort of course of its process, and the applicants have taken on board both officers as well as the landscape officers' comments, and have now set the building in further, and there's been some slight tweaks to the existing sort of the main building here, and including extra landscape. These are example or the brochure from the bell tents. So this is the area. So the road is over here. The paddock area is quite overgrown. As you can see, this land does slope, and the main property, Dodford Grange, is up here. So again, this is closer. There's an existing willow tree here, and it faces onto the open countryside. Now, there is a need for tourism in the locality. This has been included as part of our economic side of things, and our economic advisor has actually stated that they actually support this sort of style of development. Now, yes, the site is in the open countryside. Yes, there is going to be some impact on sort of the form and character, especially as at the moment the existing paddock area is part of a distinct difference between the main village to the north here and the separate here. However, as I said, during the application process, it had been amended to try and create still some separation between the 2 part of the villages. As concerns have been raised regarding noise and amenity issues as a result of the proposed development, but given sort of the topography of the site and also the relationship with other properties, it's considered that it will not have an adverse impact. As you can see within the papers, the environmental health officer has raised no objection. Highways have also been raised as a concern. However, it's considered that it will not have an adverse impact. In fact, the local highway authority have got no objections to the proposal. Concern has also been raised regarding the impact on the character, the appearance of the locality. Again, there is going to be an impact. However, given the nature of the site, it's raised above the height, and with the additional landscaping, we consider the impact is acceptable. Concern has already been raised as a flooding and through smells, through the sewage. As you can see within the papers again, there is a condition recommended in regards to details of that to be submitted to and approved in writing by us. Therefore, overall, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Catherine. 3 speakers we have. Mr. Steele is the first one who's against the application. You have 3 minutes, sir. Mr. Steele?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. I've been called in to represent 4 village families who would be impacted if the committee were to approve the current scheme, and also representing myself as a long-standing village member and owner of Dodford Manor, one of the wedding venues referred to in the application. I refer you to one of our first graphics. One of the potentially impacted families abuts and neighbours that field development. Number 1, the Green. They can't be here this evening. Kathy Farmer and Ian Farmer. One's a paramedic, the other one's an ambulance technician, and both are out on a night shift at the moment, saving lives. They'll be returning later this evening to the quiet sanctity of their village home. I'm representing 2 octogenarians, 3 doors down, marked in blue, Ian and Jane Meller, to septuagenarians and 2 further septuagenarians opposite the church, all marked in blue. Mr. Colin Newton is representing the parish and myself as the village as a whole, but I've been asked by these people to represent these 4 quiet, considerate, community-minded families who've done a lot for the village and have asked me to represent them. The key points I'd be sort of bringing up, though there's been a range of objections, and this is not a case of NIMBYism, but well considered and serious objections and concerns, are the planning approach, which is speculative, the noise issue, and the health and safety with regard to vehicle, particularly, and also pedestrians walking late at night. First of all, the planning approach. There's been a speculative approach to the planning application and the license application. There's been an element of masking of the real ambition of the village located site. The application is not simply for a disproportionate increase in B&B operation, but as a quasi-hotel and outdoor hospitality venue within the immediate vicinity of the village. A similar operation I draw your attention to was granted permission at a neighbouring village a few years since, and since closed due to its incompatibility with the village life. In this application, the applicant masks the details of the total capacity they're seeking to accommodate at the Grange Field site, which is around 32 people. The applicant has also made no reference to the fact that they were going to employ an entertainment license there to enable them to serve food and alcohol, music inside and outside till late. And there's no decibel limitation on the site. The applicant has admitted to several village members that they're putting planning and licensing applications in and seeing what they get. The net effect of this speculation short term has been significant distress and concern placed on the neighbouring neighbours and the villagers. Should the committee not reject the application, it's highly likely the applicant will submit additional premises licences to increase the footprint of alcohol, music, food sales to the Greenfield site. Secondly, noise issues. The applicant pertains to have the support of 3 local wedding venues. That is not true. Dodford Manor, for one, opposes the application. We've not written in support of it, and we are surprised by the scale of guest numbers aspired to on the Greenfield site and the application of an entertainment licence for their B&B. We'll not be recommending our guests stay at this site, and the impact upon our village neighbours would be significant. Any wedding venue guests arriving at Dodford Grange between 11 p.m. and half. Sorry, okay, I'll wrap up.
Can you sum up, please? Now.
Yeah, between midnight will be arriving and make significant noise. They'll be exuberant and celebratory, and the guests will not go quietly to their beds. Imagine 32 guests arriving late at night, early morning, trying to find their way to the bell tents, to their H-block accommodation, and trying to get into indoor cabins.
Can you finish now, please?
Sorry, I would draw your attention, lastly, to the concern.
No, can you finish, please?
Lastly, my concern is to the access.
No, can you finish? Can you
finish,
please? Much. Mr. Newton from the Parish Council.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Colin Newton and I represent the parish of Dodford in my capacity as parish clerk. Last year, we balloted our parishioners for their views on this planning application. By an overwhelming majority, 98% of our 88 respondents indicated not just their opposition, but their great fear of this substantial and highly intrusive new build development. The application site is clearly set in open countryside, well outside the confines and the built edge of our village, and hence is contrary to local planning policy. There is also no clear evidence, we feel, to suggest that this self-contained venture would in any way contribute to the wider economy. The photograph you see in front of you depicts the very rural and agricultural nature of the application site and its surrounding land. The application site is the area you can see bounded in blue. The area bounded in red on the left lies just 15 metres to the west and relates to its inclusion in, inclusion is in the context of a recently declined planning appeal concerning attempted development on this parcel of land. The planning inspector, in arriving at his decision, stated, and I quote, "When entering Dodford from the A45, there is a clear start to the settlement in the form of the day nursery on one side of the road and a row of dwellings directly opposite. In my view, this represents a distinct change in the character between the countryside and the village." Another planning appeal, this time for a holiday lets development, again in open countryside, this time beyond the northwestern boundary of Dodford, was also declined just 2 months ago for the same reason. The excessive scale of the substantial H-shaped accommodation and functions block, which I shall now refer to as H block, blatantly conflicts with planning policy as regards appropriate scale. Also, the hard-built style of this building hard-built style of this building does not in any way harmonise with its surroundings. To put the excessive scale of this building into context, the ground footprint area of the building alone represents typically the combined ground footprint area of 3 to 4 large houses. With a maximum anticipated combined guest and visitor capacity of 70 plus people at both the applicant's B&B establishment and the application site, sewage, grey water and rainwater dispersal are a major concern. Dodford has no connection to the mains drainage system, and all domestic properties in the village rely on septic tanks for the processing and dispersion of their sewage and grey water outputs. Dodford village lies at the bottom of a steeply sided valley, approximately 100 feet or 30 metres below the main A45 road, upon which Dodford Grange B&B is situated. The geology of the geology of Dodford Valley is problematic, as we have a deep and impervious bed of blue lias clay running less than a metre below the surface. Any soak-away output will migrate laterally and emerge, and frequently does, where the clay becomes exposed. This is particularly apparent where the lane...
Thank you, sir. Can you finish now? Thank you. Mr. Hammond, who's for the application.
Good evening, Chair and Councillors. I hope you can hear me.
Go ahead.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I speak on behalf of the applicants. The officer's recommendation that the application be approved is welcomed. I would just like to make the following observations in support. The applicants have asked me to stress to you that the proposal is for a high-end visitor accommodation to run alongside their existing B&B accommodation. My client's existing facility has been voted in the top 10 accommodation providers in Northamptonshire with excellent online reviews. My clients have worked closely with Catherine Daniels and the Council's Landscape Planning Officer to produce a scheme that fits well within its setting and the wider landscape. In particular, changes have been made, already highlighted by Mrs. Daniels, to the scheme, including to minimise visual impacts, and those changes are resiting of the bell tents, omission of the shower block, reduction in the floor levels, strengthening of the existing hedgerow to the roadside boundary, and new planting. The officers comment that the holiday let building would have the appearance of a converted barn is noted and agreed. There is significant national and local planning policy support for the scheme, which seeks to support proposals which improve the tourism offer and provide synergy with established businesses, and which make a contribution to the rural economy. Policy R2 of the core strategy in particular seeks to support small-scale rural tourism proposals, including outside of villages, including for visitor accommodation that helps support and sustain the rural economy. This policy is also this support is also echoed in policy RA6 of the new local plan. The proposal would bring benefits for the local rural economy, not least through employment of local people to assist in the running of the facility, and the outright support and encouragement by the council's economic development officer in uncertain times is particularly welcomed. Proposed accommodation would meet an identified need borne out by the experience of the applicants, including the existing confirmed B&B bookings that extend. The siting of the facility is such that it would provide conveniently located high-end accommodation to meet need generated by existing wedding venues in this part of the district, including those very nearby. That need for high-end accommodation is currently met in the area, high demand for accommodation by local large businesses. The concerns of some of the community are acknowledged, but we believe those concerns are unfounded. There is no objection by the council's environmental health officer, and the mitigation proposed by condition 6 is supported. The existing visitor accommodation offer has not generated complaints to the council in respect of noise, and the applicants do live on site. So in
3 minutes,
effect,
Chair.
it will be self-policing.
Thank
Thank you for your time, and hope that the committee is able to support the proposal. Just wanted to say, as a former member of the council, I do wish you all the very best for the future and the transition to West Northamptonshire. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, now, members, I used to have a nice picture of you all, which told me which ward you represent. So if I get it wrong tonight, it's not because I've got a touch of the others, it's because I haven't got a picture of you. Is this Whedon's?
Yes.
It is Whedon's. So I've got Councillor Smith and Councillor Brown. So Councillor Smith, you'll go first. You're on the committee.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully all members are familiar with Dodford, but for those that maybe not, it's fairly unique in its topography, how it sits, and also its somewhat limited access. Anybody who knows it will probably nod their heads on that one. I have concerns with this application. It sits outside the confines of the village. I appreciate there may well be need for accommodation for leisure or whatever, but this simply isn't the place. Dodford is a tiny hamlet with no services whatsoever. It's difficult to access. You would, well, there's not much in the way of footpaths and things. So yeah, I have huge concerns. The fact that we have flooding and sewage problems as well there because of the way the geography of the site. But back to where we're at in policy, this is going against a number of policies. It fails RA3B, RA3C3. It goes against policy RA6 as well, RA68 for anyone who's making notes. This is just not the right thing for Dodford. I'm sure this is the right thing for our area, but somewhere else. So because of the fact it goes against policies, and clearly what the parish council has said also, I mean, who better knows their site, their area than the parish council. So I'm afraid I don't support this this application, and I propose that we refuse it on the policies that I mentioned.
Right, do you have a seconder? You don't seem to at the moment. Oh, wait a minute, I can see some hands going up. Whose was the first hand there, Tony?
You've got Councillor Cribbin with his hand up, Chairman. You've also got
Did you second the application, Councillor Cribbin?
Yes, Chairman, I'd second Councillor Smith's proposal to refuse. I'd just like to add that no, I am concerned myself about this particular site, and I've looked at the papers quite closely, and I've been on the planning portal site and had a look at all the documentation they've supplied. There is, I mean, I think Councillor Johnny Amos, who's also a local member, I think he wants to speak as well, but I won't steal his thunder. But I think there's a lot of issues surrounding the noise and the disruption this is going to cause to the local people, which Councillor Smith hasn't particularly raised, but I know it was raised by the by Mr. Steele and also the parish council, Mr. Newton. But no, so I won't say any more. I'll let Councillor Amos come back, because I'm sure he wants to talk about the noise issues. I'm sure. One thing I would say, condition 6. Look, I've looked at the licensing side of things as well, and looked at the license that was being recently granted. The hours of amplified music on our condition here refer to 2230. They refer to 2200 hours on the licensing, just as a bit of a consistency there. But no, I would say I would definitely second Councillor Smith and let other members speak.
Thank you, Councillor Cribb. How could I forget Johnny Amos? My gosh. As I've mentioned, Councillor Brown, I better let him go first. Councillor Brown, you wish to speak?
Chairman, it doesn't appear Councillor Brown's on the meeting.
Well, he won't be speaking then, will he? Right, Councillor Amos, over to you, sir.
Right, well, thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, good to see you in the seat. Now, I think this is a good idea, but of course, in the wrong place, as it's been mentioned. And this application, as we've heard from the parish council and the parishioners, is reflected across the whole village community. So not wishing to repeat what you've already heard, I concur with views that if this application got approval, it would give out that message that noise pollution in a small rural community is literally superseded by businesses, and particularly one that is in the immediate vicinity of other properties and those living in the village. Now, in addition to the effluent situation, and this is really far from ideal, that with up to 70 plus, as you've already heard, people that are going to come onto that site, I can see major problems, not only from the sewerage point of view, but also from noise, with that property sitting so high. And I don't think, even with my knowledge of botany and horticulture, that there are going to be many trees and shrubs that are going to block out the sort of noise that's going to be heard from that site. And therefore, it is the reason that I would ask that this application is refused. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Before I go to another member, I'm going to back to the planning officer. Catherine, you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I know sort of about your concerns about noise and disturbance to sort of nearby residential properties. Our environmental health officer has got no objections to the proposal. And I note Councillor Cribben's note about the 2200. If members did approve the application, then that's potentially something which could be changed to concur with what's happening with the licensing. However, hearing members, I think it's not the principle of development, i.e. tourism, that you're more concerned about. It's potentially more about the impact on the character and appearance of the locality and the beauty and tranquility of the open countryside. So it's more that it impacts on that sort of side of thing rather than the noise specific issues per se. Is that correct, Councillor Smith, just to go through?
Yes. So coming back to I think is RA3C. So yes, it's in fact I can quote it to everybody. Protect the form, character and setting of the village in areas of historical or environmental importance, including those identified in conservation areas, and also to protect the amenity of existing residents. That is RA3C6. So yes, it's about the basically it's the amenity of the residents there and how this will affect them adversely and quite seriously so.
And
Okay.
Sorry, through you, Chairman. Also potentially with RA6, where it talks about no significant adverse impacts on its character, beauty, and tranquility. So
yes, I mean because that ties back to, funnily enough, to the appeal decision for the site on the left-hand side of the proposed site. Concerning the distinct character between countryside and the village itself.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got three councillors' hands up. I'll tell you who they are and the order they're coming. Councillor Irving Swift is first. Councillor Councillor James is second. Councillor Ritchie is next. No, Councillor James isn't second. Sorry. Councillor Ritchie is second. Councillor Dabbs is next. Then Councillor James. So I'm going in that order. Those will be the next four speakers. Councillor Irving Swift.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I am very pleased with what our principal planning officer said. Now, where I am concerned is it's an open countryside and it's a paddock. And I do not like when they said, oh, it's not well maintained, because everybody with an open countryside can let their field goes non-maintained, and after said, oh, it would be an improvement to the site if we build something, which in fact is because in the first place they don't maintain the site and they make it grubby. So for me, that is not a very good argument that it is the site will look better with what it is with the management. And I will concur with Councillor Smith. The proposal seems rather big. The pods are not small. The venue is, for me, for a small village like that, like all the village, everybody wants tourism, but in a village like that, not in that scale, in one go. After, could I ask the officer, when planning permission has been given for that, can it be transformed to 3 executive homes? I know we cannot see the future, but if we agree that it's open countryside and it becomes part of the planning land, it can be built for executive home without any problem. So I just don't like that idea either, but could I have clarification from the principal officer? Thank you.
Thank you. We're not going back to the officer at the moment. If you can hold that question, officer, next time we come to you, if you could answer that. Councillor Ritchie, next.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think my first question, and it does require an answer, I think, from an officer. There have been various references to 70+ people being on this site. How many people are on it at the moment with its present facilities? Clearly 70 doesn't sort of fit onto the new site here that is being proposed. Can somebody, before I go further, just clarify that?
Catherine, can you do a quick one on that?
I believe it's around about 5 rooms they rent out occasionally, or rent out at the present moment.
And the answer to the other question?
In regards to the numbers, they're sort of double rooms, I presume. So I can't confirm how many people have gone on to that site at one particular time. All we can do is go on with what's being proposed, which is sort of to do tourism, which is in accordance, or as officers think it's in accordance, and very similar to the existing B&B use. Thank you.
And while you're there, can you answer Councillor Irving Swift's question?
Obviously, we can only go on applications which are before you. We can't, as you said, we haven't got a crystal ball, so we can't decide what may happen in the future. It's for what's before members at the moment. If potentially they do want to come forward to change it in the future, if planning permission was granted, then that would have to be a separate application.
Thank you. Did that answer your question, Councillor Ritchie?
Well, now I know that perhaps that there's not a clear answer to it.
Right.
But I remain quite unconvinced that, by figures of 70+. Now, I mean, obviously, it's a big negative.
What the heck is that? Oh.
There's a big negative in this application, in that it's supposedly in open countryside. But we're talking in open countryside about, in technical planning terms, about it being open countryside. To me, this is just a bit of land between 2 bits of the same village. We also talk about the tranquility of the countryside. Well, come of it, this development is alongside the E45. There's no tranquility here at all. You need to have the music turned up quite high to be able to hear it properly, I would guess, at some times. But nevertheless, I do accept that in the proposal, the idea that whether it's 2030 or 10 o'clock as the time beyond which there should be no amplified music, I would think it would be fairly horrendous if local residents had to put up with amplified music even up to 10 o'clock every night. I would have thought that there's a case for having a much shorter period in which you can have amplified music. And perhaps as you have got tents, I don't know why tents, but that's probably not our concern. But tents don't contain noise. I would have thought there's an argument for not having amplified music within tents, so that you don't have that. But if these problems could be overcome, I don't actually see, I can't actually see terribly much objection to this application. I know it's of a sort, it's open countryside, but it is effectively the, a gap between two bits of the village. And from that point of view, I would be quite happy with this. My only concern is that the noise, the period for the noise is sort of rather long. However, I wonder if the next time that the officers respond to questions, the applicant could easily ask for an entertainment license for the premises they have got at the moment. That would, I assume, not be something for us to adjudicate on, even if we were here in the future. But does that mean that there's a limit to what this planning committee can reasonably do in putting a restriction on noise?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dowds.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In some respects, Councillor Ritchie has already nabbed my questions. I was interested in the numbers. My point of view on this is really, and I'm looking at pages 34 and 35, and it's policies E7, R1, R2, and it's using the words of small scale. Is this small scale? I think my personal opinion that this is not small scale. This is somewhat a bit bigger than small scale. I don't know what sort of parameters we should put on small scale. Is that 5 or 10 people, 3 or 4 rooms? Who knows? My impression is that this is not small scale. However, should we be approving this, I think the noise conditions certainly need to be wound back to 10 o'clock, as the Environmental Health Officer has stated in the report. And I know it's been noted there's a bit of a discrepancy between that and the licensing, but if that was recommended in this report, I think we should say 10 o'clock. And I would also think it's necessary to consider no amplified music outside, and by outside I would include all the tents, so outside formal buildings. So yes, I think I would be tending towards not wanting to approve this, so going along with the recommended motion. The question to me is it small scale or not? And I rather think it is not small scale. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Irving, sorry, Councillor James next, then Councillor Irving Swift. You're on mute.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me? Yeah. Yes, I think I want to dispel a couple of myths about this site. It isn't in open countryside by any means. Dodford is parts intersected by the A45. And a very busy section of the A45. It starts getting busy there from early in the morning. And occasionally of late, when it's really, really busy, you can hear the noise of that A45. If you listen carefully, you can hear it as far away as Everton. So remember that there are 2 parts of the village, the part where this is situated, and then on the opposite side of the road, a row of houses, one of which, funnily enough, on the corner of Everton Road was actually a pub many years ago. I think it was called the Queen's Head. I think it went sometime around the late 60s, maybe it survived to the 70s. So it was actually considered a part of the village then, which it is. So I wouldn't get carried away with this argument about it being in open countryside. It's far from that. I wouldn't consider it that at any rate. It is a site which is it is on the flank road, which is used as a bit of a rat run from people who want to cut through to the A5, and it descends sharply down from the A45 down the hill into the main part of Dodford Village, and then carries on out to connect ultimately with the Watling Street. Now, as far as the developments is concerned, it's an existing business. Here we have a person who wants to expand that business. And in its entirety, it is only a small scale business in any event. And we are supposed to be encouraging that in accordance with the National Planning Policy Framework. I do take the point that's been raised by both Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Dabbs as regards music. And I think 10 o'clock is probably a long stop on music on that site. And I wouldn't be against, should we decide to grant permission for this, about a limitation on the music side of things. But other than that, I can't see any reasonable excuse for not going along with officers' advice on this one. Certainly, I'd be happy to propose that we go with officers' advice on this at any rate.
Okay. Well, you can't at the moment because we've got a proposal the other way. Right. I was going to say I've got 4 hands up. One is the proposer, so I'm going to leave him till last of the 4 to sum up, and then I'm not going to take any more because you're going to be here till 2 o'clock in the morning if you take this time on one application. Next person is I'm going to take is Councillor Irving Swift, then Councillor Wesley, then Councillor Parker, then I'm going back to the proposer to sum up and then to the vote. So yes, Councillor Irving Swift.
Thank you, Chairman. 2 questions. Councillor before us, Councillor James, said it's not in open countryside. Our officer said it was in open countryside. It's not because it's not. It's in open countryside. Our officer says so. But more important, I asked the officer, it's not for what I was asking. My question was, if we give permission, and I am not minding at the moment to agree with the position of the officer, but if permission was given on the site to build what it is, do we change the nature of the open countryside to something that could be part of the village, and therefore de facto has a planning is not open countryside and can be built on it. It's not to see we cannot, and I agree with the officer, rightly so. She said that we cannot see future. But for me, when you have a red line, what you have done is a red line stop at your first point, and you have increased the red line of the plot for building up with the paddock. For example, I have a paddock in my house. The paddock, I cannot build on it. If suddenly you put the red line around my paddock, I can build on it. So for me, do we give the applicant a change of use of the paddock? So does the paddock, de facto, from being open countryside, not being able to build on, become part of the village and can be built on for other reasons? That is my question, because that I think should be in the mind of when we take a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Catherine's answered it, but do you want to answer it more clearly, perhaps, Catherine, quickly?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We don't stop development in the open countryside. It's sort of, there's more of a higher bar within the open countryside. Obviously, with tourism uses, they tend to be within the open countryside in any case, and we've got policies within our local plan which support rural enterprise in the rural area. So hence why as officers we're supporting that, because it's not residential, it's more of an economic use. So yes, it will change the character, but it's for a rural tourism issue or proposal rather than residential.
Right, thank you. Right, Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points of clarification. Yes, the inspector said it was in open countryside and the officer said it's in open countryside. So it's in open countryside. with regarding what a couple of the councillors asked about the number 70, where we got that came from, on the licence agreement, they can currently have 36 guests on the bed and breakfast and bringing guests back. That's the maximum, plus the people who run the site. So 36 to 70, if you think what's been put forward, I can quite easily get to 60 or 70 people on that site without any problems at all. So I feel minded not to support officers' advice on this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Right, I'm going back to the proposer, after which the vote will be taken. Councillor Smith, to sum up.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, to sum up, the site does lie outside the confines of the village. It does go against the policies I've already listed. This is, as Councillor Parker has very well put it, this is not a small scale development. I think there's probably more, this would actually house more people on that site than live in Dodford, or very, very close. So yeah, I don't support it, clearly, as you've all heard already. I'd like to think that the committee can see that this is the right thing in the wrong place. Dodford cannot cope with something such as this. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, now we're going to Marina for you to cast your vote. Now remember, the proposition is to refuse the application. So whether you support or don't support that reason, Marina will ask you. Over to you, Marina.
Okay. Councillor Chandler.
Against.
Councillor Cribbin.
For.
Councillor Dabbs.
For.
Councillor Frost.
Abstain.
Councillor Harris.
For refusal.
Councillor Irving Swift.
For refusal.
Councillor James.
Against.
Councillor Matton.
For.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Ritchie.
Against.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Wesley.
Against.
Yep. 7 in favour, 4 against, 1 abstention, Chair.
So the application is refused. Correct?
Yeah.
That's what you're, yes. The
Yes,
application is
that's correct,
refused for the
Chairman.
given reasons. Okay. Thank you. We move on to Overston, which is, sorry, we don't move on to Overston. We go into Daventry first.
Thank you, Chair. This is a site, if I just share my screen and the presentation. It's off Badby Road West in Daventry, near the old college or the new college site in the residential development, which you can see. So this is the old college site, which has now been developed. Got the helicopter park here. It's existing detached property with a detached garage to the front. If you just go to the next one, the Sherwood House and Orchard House are both within the same ownership. Sherwood House and the garage here have been sort of turned into flats for short-term leases, whether it's for 1 day, a week or a month, but they're more of a shared or small term lease. And this proposal here before members tonight is regarding this garage here, which is to convert it into a 1-bed flat. As you can see, the site has got existing access which is shared between the two sites, and there's ample parking between the two. As you can see within the report, the local highway authority do not have any objections. The only change to the proposal is removal of the garage and replacing the window and putting windows in here and here. All the other windows and doors remain as existing. So this is the view from the main sort of the entrance, so you can see there's sufficient parking. The local highway authority has mentioned that don't have an objection. The proposal will not have an adverse impact on residential amenity. Overall, it's considered that it should be approved. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We have no speakers on this. Who's the local member? Put your hand up. I haven't got your list.
Councillor Dabbs, Chairman.
Councillor Dabbs, go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Not really much to say on this. I don't really think that there's many issues at all. I think based on the fact that there's been no neighbour objections, it's already running this business already in all the other areas of the properties and so on, in the various numbers of apartments that it's out on less. I disagree with the town council for their objection. So I see no reason to not approve this. So I would propose that we approve this.
Thank you, Councillor Dabbs. Do you have a seconder?
Councillor Wesley, Chairman.
Councillor Wesley, you'd like to speak, sir, and second it?
Yeah, I'll second this. I don't see any issues with it, really. I mean, anytime, any place, there can be an issue with parking on a particular day, but there's ample to accommodate most days on this, it looks to me. So yeah, I see nothing to add, really. Yeah, agree with officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wesley. Any speakers? Yes, Councillor James.
Yes, just a little point to make. If you go to the end of Badby Road West, right to the end, and you come to the bypass, there's open countryside beyond. So I take it that this is within open countryside, despite the fact that it is residential. Just a point to make. Thank you.
Yeah, makes me smile. Thank you. No more speakers. We have a proposal that the application be approved as per officers advised, and it's been seconded. So over to you for the roll call.
Councillor Chandler.
For.
Councillor Cribbin.
For.
Councillor Dabbs.
For.
Councillor Frost.
For.
Councillor Harris.
For.
Councillor Irving Swift.
For.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Matton.
For. Thank you.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Ritchie.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Wesley.
For.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. The application is approved. Now we go a few miles across the district to Malton Overston area. Right, over to you, officers.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just share my screen with you. So this is a reserve matter application with access, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale relating to application 2013-0850, which was for the SUE at Overstone Lees, and it's for the erection of a food store, and also includes the discharge of a number of conditions relating to the outline consent. So this is the master plan that was approved at outline stage for the Overstone Lees Sustainable Urban Extension. The planning permission included consent for a local centre. If I just in the middle there. That was positioned to the north and south of Sywell Road. The local centre approved consent for a food store, public house, care home, day nursery, medical centre, parade of 5 retail units and light industry. So as I've just said, this is a reserve matter application for a food store within a local centre. It falls within the parameters of the approval. The outline approved a food store of up to 2,000 square metres, and the proposed food store is for 1,842. Therefore, the principle of the food store has been established. Overstone Parish Council have objected to the proposal for a number of reasons, which are set out in late items and the report. Malton Parish Council are in support, as 80% of the residents are in favour of the scheme. So this screen slide just shows the original submission and then the first revision. So officers did raise concerns with the original design and the appearance of the unit with the use of materials and the limited openings. It was grey cladding materials, which we didn't think was appropriate for the area. There's a further revision which shows more neutral colour cladding materials with the introduction of timber cladding as well. So various amendments have been made to alter the materials. This is the latest revision, which includes reconstituted stone, timber cladding, and more neutral coloured render panels are now proposed. 2 additional bays of false glazing have also been added to the principal elevation in order to provide interest to the elevations. There's also a return of the canopy over the entrance store has been added, and it now wraps around the northeast elevation to the store. So that just shows a visual of how it will sit in the context of the surrounding area. The store will be accessed via the new section of Sywell Road. Local Highway Authority supports the access arrangements. They did originally raise concerns with HGVs using the same access arrangements as shoppers, and originally suggested a separate access. The applicants have, however, submitted additional information to address how HGVs would access the site and setting out the number of deliveries per day. There's a maximum of 2 deliveries, and that's most likely to be 1, given the size of the store proposed. Other food stores within Northampton are accessed in a similar way, and as such, the local highway authority is satisfied with the information submitted and it supports the application. 4 active electric vehicle charging spaces are proposed to the front of the scheme. They're proposed from day 1. There are also a further 20 passive spaces proposed. These spaces have been future-proofed so that the additional charging spaces can be added at a later date when the uptake of electric vehicles increases. A landscaping scheme has been submitted for the site, and our landscape officer is satisfied with the scheme proposed. It's just a few photos to show the scheme in context of where it is, adjacent to the new Sywell Road, the roundabout, and the A43. With regards to the setting of Pikeshley gates, the impact would have been assessed with the granting of the outline planning permission. Pikeshley gates would not be visible due to the future development taking place. The residential units are within the SUE and the approved development at Overstone Farm. Existing landscaping at Overstone Farm will be retained as part of the development, which will prevent any visual impact. Taking into account all the matters highlighted and those in the report, the application is to recommend approval subject to receiving further advice from consultees in relation to discharging the gas and drainage conditions relating to the outline consent. Just draw members' attention to late items. We've got a further 7 representations from local residents objecting to the scheme. All of the issues raised have been addressed in the report. There are further additional consultee comments, and there are a couple of updates in terms of the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Right, we have 3 speakers. The first one's Mr. Mystery, who's against the application. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. So just to start, I'm not against the development as such in terms of Aldi, and welcome the need for the food store. However, where I do have an issue is the public consultation leaflet, which was delivered to 2,000 homes in the area, stated that there would be 123 car parking spaces. However, the reserved matters planning application is now stating there's going to be 138, which significantly reduces the green space and the within the area and the landscaping. And I'm struggling to understand how that can be increased without knowing what the actual capacity of the store is going to be. The public consultation stated that there would be attractive landscaping incorporated around the site to enhance its appearance. Clearly, if the number of spaces to park has been appreciably increased, the area to do so is going to be diminished or significantly diminished. So could this reserved matter application, if approved by committee, be given a consideration of the parking spaces in line with the public consultation? Therefore, the original 123 spaces for the landscaping described, and should capacity be required, the additional 15 spaces are looked at a later point in time once we know what the use of the store is going to be. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, Mr. Austin from the Parish Council. Are you there, Mr. Austin?
No, sorry, I didn't unmute myself. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, John Austin, Chairman of the Overston Parish Council. My point's simple and straightforward, really. The original planning permission, which the local community were consulted on, was for a local convenience store. And my first observation is that an Aldi supermarket with 138 parking spaces in the car park is not a convenience store. In reality, it's a large supermarket. Therefore, the goalposts of the public consultation have been changed substantially, and whatever had or has been agreed should now be off the table. The approach to Northampton along the A43 is the northeastern gateway to Northampton, and these current planned developments are what people will first see when they're approaching Northampton from the rural northeast of the county. Even with the proposed changes, it's still an ugly building, and Overston is an attractive linear village with a spectacular large stone walled parkland dating back to the early 19th century. And it would be a crime to allow a development that wasn't in keeping with the historic and natural beauty of the area to go ahead. If you allow this development to go ahead, which reduces the approach to Northampton, Malton and Sywell to the entrance to a bland and bog standard characterless retail park, it will be an opportunity missed. It's also folly to have the entrance and exit to the supermarket onto the Sywell Road and not utilise the spur road for at least the entrance to the car park and then have the exit going out onto the Sywell Road. There is bound to be congestion with traffic queuing at all times of high volume, and the traffic will tail back onto the A43 roundabout and impede vehicles travelling in both directions on the A43. There are several annual events held in Overston Park which haven't been held due to the pandemic, and these are weekend events with the attendees camping in the park. These people will use the supermarket, causing serious congestion of the A43. And my plea is that the development is given sufficient thought to provide a sensitive, sustainable building with minimal negative impact on the residents of Malton, Overston and Sywell. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Third speaker, Mr. Templeton, who's the agent.
Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. My name's Dan Templeton. I'm Aldi's planning application for this reserved matters application. Aldi is delighted that officers have recommended to you that the application is approved this evening. And as officers have already confirmed, the application before you follows the earlier grant of planning permission for the wider Overstone Lees development. That original outline planning permission, which was issued in August 2015, granted permission for a total of 2,000 dwellings and also approved the development of a local centre. The approved local centre is to contain a food store of up to 2,000 square metres, as we've already heard. This reserved matters application therefore seeks only detailed approval for the food store that already has outline planning permission. Now, in bringing the application forward, Aldi has worked with officers and has necessarily been guided by the master plan and design code that was approved as part of the original outline planning permission. We also undertook a public consultation exercise to ensure that local residents and stakeholders were fully informed about the application. Now, unfortunately, due to the wider challenges, we were prevented from presenting the scheme in person or indeed via an exhibition, and the consultation necessarily took place via post, a website and virtual engagement. Nevertheless, this consultation led to an impressive 81% of residents from throughout the local area voicing their support for the application. Now, both the parish council and officers have challenged Aldi to amend the proposed store design to reflect the local design vernacular more closely. And since the consultation, we have changed the design, as Rebecca has outlined, and we've changed the materials of the proposed store and made sure that it responds to the wider area, it responds to the new development that's coming forward, and that it reflects the design guidance set by the outline permission. Now, obviously, we're pleased that officers support the application and recommend to you that it should be approved. The local highway authority also confirmed that the store, its access from Sywell Road and the car parking proposed is acceptable. They too recommend that reserved matters approval should be granted and that there is no highways reason to refuse the proposals. The Aldi store therefore represents the first step to deliver local centre facilities for the Overstone area, and with your approval is capable of being completed in early 2022. Now, the other elements of the approved local centre, including the care home and further retail floor space, are subject to separate discussions, and these will no doubt be considered by you on another occasion. Your officers recommend that reserved matters approval is granted this evening, and I invite you to agree with that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Right, local members. Councillor Cribbin is Moulton, so would you like to go, Councillor Cribbin?
Chairman, thank you for, I'm local member. This is a tricky one because I represent two parishes, Moulton and Overstone. You've heard that Moulton are largely in favour of this application, whereas Overstone aren't. And I know Overstone have got serious doubts about this particular application. That I know that we've had a lot talked about tonight about local consultation, etc. Appreciate that we've had the pandemic, etc. But I just wanted to put on record that when the letters came through letterboxes saying whether you like this or not, I replied as local member and I said that please can I be kept up to date with what's going on. I've heard nothing from Aldi and their people. No, my local councillor Mike Warren as well also has heard nothing. So as local members, we've not been kept in the loop. We've obviously been going to the parish council meetings and hearing what they're saying, but I'm just slightly disappointed that despite saying we would like to be kept updated and please contact us, nobody from LD has done so today. But that's just my little gripe there. I see what Overstone Parish Council are saying, and they obviously are still not happy with this design. I know that some have changed the design, but from what we hear tonight, that the parish council still isn't happy. They don't think it actually sits well with the local area. The local area is more to do with rural stone and wood and things. And I know Aldi have changed, but I still don't think we've changed enough to satisfy the local people here with regard to the design. Now, I'm not going to. Well, I'm in two minds as to whether or not we could say that this actually doesn't comply with ENV 10 and say that it's poor design still. I know we've got a supermarket here, and I know what we've got in front of us. The parish council is saying that this is too big, and we were all told it's going to be a local convenience store, etc. But I accept that the outline planning permission did give permission for a 2,000 square metre building, and this is underneath that. So I think there's a little bit lost in translation there as to what the local people thought was going to happen and what actually has been approved prior to this evening. That aside, it is still quite a large supermarket on the edge of the village, and I know it will soon become part of the SUE, but to quote David James, Councillor James, this is still in open countryside at the moment. And it will actually stick out quite a lot, even when the new SUE is actually built. So that aside, I say I still have reservations about the design of this building, and I'm in two minds tonight. As I'm talking, I'm formulating whether or not we should put forward a recommendation to refuse it, because we still think the design is poor and it should be changed. Now, I think we are probably a little bit premature in bringing this to full planning committee, bearing in mind the outstanding reservations of Overstone Parish Council. And I know we discussed this application. I think it was at the OBMH committee, which is the local like community committee that talks about applications for the SUEs all and around Northampton. And I know Officer Rebecca Grant was going to take some matters back to the applicant, I think, in respect of design, because it was raised at that meeting that the design was still an issue, and also the access point to the car park is considered to be an issue as well. I understand, say, you've got Councillor John Austin, the chairman of the parish council, saying tonight that they have concerns about the traffic backing up onto the A43. If you go back, I mean, I don't know whether the officers can put up the plans again, but we're looking at the roundabout which this comes off is the one that's fairly close to the Shell petrol station on the A43. It's likely, I mean, we've got a couple of toucan crossings fairly close to the A43. We've actually we're trying to create a flow. No, putting all these extra points in is going to necessarily, it's going to make a problem with regard to slowing that traffic down and probably causing backup onto the A43. Now, Overston have put forward a proposition. You'd say that, thank you, that's the plan I'm looking at. To the left of that picture is that you can see that the roundabout. The entrance to the site is, in my view, far too close to the A43. It's going to cause major problems and backup onto the A43. The suggestion that they put the entrance at the back end on the right-hand side, which is to the bottom, so like southeast of the picture here, would be more suitable, I think. And I think that the highways department is wrong in its suggestion that it feels that it's fine. I'm of the opinion that obviously the MPPF says that we can refuse applications where you've got a cumulative problem. Paragraph 109 of the MPPF says that if we've got a cumulative problem of traffic problems, it's reasonable potentially for the planning authority to refuse an application on that point alone. What doesn't show on this picture we're seeing at the moment, the multiple entrance points to various parts of the new SUE. It's going to cause a cumulative effect, which I think will probably back up onto the A43, and that's going to completely take away the whole purpose of trying to deal with the A43 to have a good bypass around the villages and the SUE. So I'm in two minds as to whether to put forward a proposition tonight that we refuse this application on ENV 10. It's against ENV 10, the poor design, and that the highway safety issues are something we should be worried about as well. Although the Highways Authority has said it's fine, we on this committee quite regularly feel that sometimes the Highways Authority doesn't take into account local need and the cumulative effect of things going on. That aside, I'm in saying two minds about whether to do that. I was thinking, well, are we premature here? Can we, or ought we to be referring this application to go back to talk about any further changes we can make to the design and to whether the entrance to the actual car park? I know it's something that Officer Rebecca Grant was going to take away, and I haven't heard anything back from that particular meeting that was had, the OBMH meeting. So I don't know whether that's been discussed and whether my fears have been averted with what's already been discussed and whether we can go any further. I'll be interested to know what Rebecca can tell me about any further negotiation with the developer, and whether we can, I think, whether we should be perhaps postponing this until the next planning committee for us to investigate those points to see whether or not anything can be done to satisfy the concerns of the local people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Criven. Rebecca, do you want to quickly answer that? You're muted.
Yes, yeah, thank you, Chair. So just to talk about access into the site, the master plan that was approved at the outline stage, and it is only indicative, but it does show an access off the Sywell Road into the local centre. There is also, that does go back onto what will be School Road, but there is an indicative access shown on there. Following the meeting, the Ombra meeting, I did discuss this with Highways and the concerns that the parish council have raised. I think the Highway Authority accepted that at certain times there may be some congestion with the extra demand on the retail centre at peak times of the year. But the store is relatively small, and the suggestion of having access off the school road, or what would be known as school road, we've got to weigh that against, because there will be residential properties on the opposite side of school road. So we've got to weigh that against the impact on the amenity of those future residents. And particularly in terms of HGVs, in terms of planning, we would not want to see HGVs going along that smaller minor road and then into site that way. That would have a greater impact on the residents. Whereas as it's proposed, it would come straight off the A43 onto Sywell Road and then into the proposed Aldi store.
Thank you.
So ultimately, Highways, they are in support of the application for the access where it is proposed on Sywell Road.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Two speakers I'm going to now is Councillor Ritchie, then Councillor Dabbs. Councillor Ritchie first.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Cribben has suggested that discussing this might be premature. And I think his reasons for thinking that are probably much more substantial than mine. But it just struck me that, you know, there's some things about this application. I do think it's great that the people of this area are going to have a decent supermarket and not some piddly little convenience store. That bit doesn't worry me at all. I think you know, the idea is good. But page 54, the environmental health officer says, I'm still waiting, I'm still expecting a noise assessment report. There's reference later, I think page 63, that suggests that, you know, a noise assessment report hasn't been received. If a noise assessment report hasn't been received, why are we considering this application now? My concern would be that, you know, that things are simply rushed through because of the reorganisation that we're going through. But without the noise assessment report, it might be quite innocuous. It may have little bearing on the decision that we actually take. But if there's supposed to be one and it's not there, why are we discussing it? I'm also concerned about lighting. Concerns have been raised. I see no reason why you cannot have low-level lighting that provides perfect safety for people who are using the store, but doesn't make the whole area look like a sort of major football park and match night. I just feel nothing much, you know, there's no reference to that. I would, as with all these buildings, have liked to have seen some reference to, you know, just how many solar panels or renewable energy features they were going to put into it. But, you know, I don't see that. And finally, this, again, it may be a small point. Somewhere, I can't quite find the page, but there is a report from the Wildlife Trust that suggests that something needs to be done to protect badgers during construction. Now, it may be that we want to say, well, stuff the badgers. People shopping is actually more important than badgers. But let's at least address the issue that's been raised. I see nothing in the conditions about badgers, about noise, and there's very little there that is about lighting. I just feel there are too many questions about this application for me. Questions that I'm sure can be answered and can be answered satisfactorily. But at the moment, I couldn't support this.
Thank you. I'll come back to you in a little while, Rebecca. Councillor Dabbs.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think I'm agreeing with the two previous speakers. My biggest issue is the design of the store. I think ugly building is how you would describe it. I think a lot more could be done to improve the design of it so it doesn't look like it is suggested. I think actually having the suggested image is a good one to have in the officer's report. it would be nice if I could see that. And I don't know whether I missed it when I was downloading all the available reports on the website, but I think, you know, the artist's impression, I suppose is the word I'm looking for, would have been a useful thing to have seen. I still don't think the building is particularly nice to look at. And I think, you know, with Councillor Cribbin and Councillor Ritchie's concerns about all these other issues, it does seem to me that, you know, perhaps it should go back to it for some more consideration. Not quite back to the drawing board, but elements of it perhaps do need thinking about. And just to finish off, one of my significant concerns is to do with the disabled spaces. Now, I can understand that it's a good idea to have disabled spaces actually not separated from the building, so that people who are not particularly able don't have to wander over a car park where cars are running around, you know, through the actual roadways. But the disabled spaces are tucked around the corner from the entrance. I would like to see those disabled spaces much closer to the entrance. Now, that doesn't mean to say take the child and parent places away and swap them around, because I still think the disabled spaces would be a little bit far away from the entrance. Could something to be done to put those disabled spaces practically right out the door as best as they can? Again, touching the store itself, as it were, so that you don't have to go into road space and you can keep safe within a pedestrianised zone. That's all from me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm stacking these up with you, Planning Officer Rebecca. So I'll come back to you in a minute. Councillor Harris next, then Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just want to echo some of the same points already made. To my eye, the design really just looks like it's got different panelling, different colour, but fundamentally it looks pretty much exactly the same. And I do think there is a fundamental question about how it blends in to its environment and surroundings. That said, of course, Aldi, like all other retail stores, will have specific design standards of their own requirement and need. So I'm sure that's probably quite a challenge, but I would echo the point. I think it doesn't look that great. I'm pleased to hear about the opportunity to grow charging spaces. I think the way that things are moving at the moment, that might need to be accelerated rather than delayed. So it's good to hear that there's an infrastructure for that. Like Councillor Ritchie, no or little mention really of anything to do with sustainability and environmental impact of the building itself, solar, water recuperation from rainwater and so on and so forth. I know that's a planning standard issue, but it's a shame that it's not really captured in there. The road itself, where it's located, it's only recently been dualled, and if I'm correct, it's really only opened within the COVID period as such. So we don't really know what the full impact of traffic is likely to be in that particular area. It was always a problem. To my mind, the problem is simply at the moment being moved until maybe the A43 is dualled fully. So I think there will be potentially some traffic issues and traffic problems. And a general point really, and this isn't specific to this planning, but I think it's a general point on all of these planning applications. It's a bit of a misnomer to call it a local convenience store, I think. Aldi is a drive-to store. It's not a convenience store. It will attract people, quite rightly. You know, it's good for the economy, one will argue. But it isn't just a local convenience store. It will attract drive-to traffic for sure, which is going to add to the problems. And I guess I wish that these sorts of applications would call these stores what they are, rather than paint them as a local convenience store when in fact they're not. It is a supermarket, and it should be called that. One point in Brixworth, as some of you know, we have the co-op coming along very shortly. I'm just very pleased that in Malton you will be able to have your deliveries coming off road rather than being parked right on the corner of a bend, as we have in Brixworth. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of points before I start. I thought I'd read somewhere that a news report had been received and that comment had been made on the lighting, especially in relation to the car park, that it wasn't illuminated enough. So for safety reasons, they were not happy with it, but perhaps the officers can come back on that point. But anyway, the points that I want to make are these, and they were summed up very nicely by Dan. That is that this is a reserved matters application. The principle of a food store on this site has already been established. And on the question of design, I'm quite happy with the revised design with the timber panelling and possibly a stone panelling set to form some sort of relief. But I must say that many years ago, I was disabused of the notion that for something to be a good design, it had to look very, very pretty or be oldie-worldy, and disabused of that notion in a very humiliating way by an architect, a chartered architect. And me being a chartered surveyor didn't like it. But then he explained to me what good design does mean. And I can assure you that after I'd had a little mini lecture from him, a fellow academic in the land profession, I quickly understood the difference between good and bad design. Mine was more concerned with form, function, value, efficiency. His had other factors quite far and wide to be taken into account. And I say this, what is a supermarket or food store supposed to look like? Is it supposed to look like some repetition of a large country house just to fit in with some surroundings of a housing estate or two away? That really is a sore point with me on that one. So as far as I'm concerned, this ticks all the boxes. There is obviously going to be a need there for the people of Malton and Overston, and probably down at Thorpelands, Lumbertubs too. Maybe even Spinney Hill might want to come there. So I don't know. But it is part of, like Aldi, Lidl, the smaller supermarkets. They work in a very competitive environment, but they provide a service for certain sections of the public. The principles established, I'm okay with the design as far as I'm concerned. It ticks all the boxes. And I'm quite happily, to propose that we go along with the officer's recommendation on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. Do you have a seconder? Can you see a seconder, Tony?
Yeah, Councillor Chandler, Chairman.
Councillor Chandler, you wish to speak?
I've nothing to add, Chairman. I think we've heard enough.
Thank you. Now, I have a hand up from Councillor Cribbin next.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to come back. I said when I was talking, I was minded to put forward a proposal. I didn't actually formally put forward a proposal. And I don't know whether I've been trumped by Councillor James and Councillor Chandler into us discussing that first. But I mean, I said that I have concerns, and I would prefer this to be deferred personally. And I don't know what your as chair what you would like to do, but whether you want to hear the proposal that we've got here, or whether we decide whether or not we can defer this for further discussion going forward and bring it back to next planning committee, because I still think there are several questions, irrespective of the lighting and the noise, which I accept that the noise report has come in, and the environmental health officer is satisfied with that. So that's another sort of point. But the issue around the design and whether or not anything can be done with regard to the entrance and the traffic problems, which I foresee going forward, whether we can do anything further and bring it back. If there's any legal reason why we cannot bring it back in a month's time on our 21st of April meeting, then I'll be happy to hear that. But I think on determination, as long as we're not missing that, I think we should bring it back to next committee. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The way I'm going to deal with, we have a proposal, the application be approved, which has been seconded. I'm going to deal with that proposal. If that proposal loses, I shall come straight back to you, Councillor Cribbin, for you to make a proposal. Okay, so that's the way I'm going to deal with it, as I already have a proposal that's been seconded. But first, I'm going back to the officer, and then I'm going to the vote. Well, I was going to the vote. Yes, I'm going to the vote after the officer has cleared up a couple of points. Rebecca, do you wish to say something, please? Where are you? You're muted wherever you are. Can't hear you. That's it.
Is that better? Sorry. Just to clarify a couple of the points. The noise assessment has been submitted and it is referred, it wasn't at the time of drafting the report. So it's just mentioned in the late items to say that our environmental health officer is satisfied with that, and there is a condition, condition number 11, which just ensures that the development is carried out in accordance with that noise report. Also, in terms of badgers and the information from the Wildlife Trust, the ecology report, the ecological mitigation and enhancement strategy has been updated. So that now includes further consideration for the badgers. So the development needs to take that into account. So the Wildlife Trust were happy with that condition. In terms of the lighting, we were in quite an unusual position that the crime prevention officer has suggested that the lighting levels are rather low and they should be increased. So given that it will be surrounded, it's in the local centre, but it will be surrounded by residential properties, I haven't pursued that because I don't think it would be appropriate to actually increase the levels further in the area. So they are actually relatively low given the context of the residential surrounding residential area. The artist impression that was submitted, because of the various amendments that have been submitted and we've been going forwards and backwards with the design, the artist impression reflects the most updated proposal. So that's why it's not been available for consideration until this point, really. Sustainability, a sustainability report has been submitted with the application, and it does outline a number of points of how the building design assists a sustainable approach, and they are listed within in the committee report. And in just going back in terms of the design, we have sought to amend the materials to try and reflect the surrounding area. So we've now got reconstituted stone. There's more coarser timber panelling on there as well, and the more neutral coloured render panels. So I'd be interested if councillors are still concerned with the design, what further improvements would they like to see there? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, we're going to a vote now. We have a proposal the application be approved as per officer's advice, and it has been seconded. So over to you to the roll call, Marina, whether you support that proposal or not.
Okay. Councillor Alan Chandler.
For.
Councillor Cribbin.
Against.
Councillor Dabbs.
Against.
Councillor Frost.
Against.
Councillor Harris.
Against.
Councillor Irving Swift, sorry.
For.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Matton.
For.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Ritchie.
Against.
Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor Wesley.
For.
Six in favour and 6 against, Chair.
Did you say 6-6? Sorry.
Yeah.
Right, my vote will be for the application. Sorry, local member. The application is approved. The next application is in Long Buckby, which is over to Eamon. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman. Hopefully members can see the screen. Application site lies within the confines, the limits of the village. It's a classic backland scenario whereby you've got a large garden serving a traditional large dwelling house. With development over time, the site is now surrounded by residential properties. Previous application on the site was refused for two low-level bungalows, which were stretched across the site. The applicant, following that refusal, together with his agent, engaged with officers to seek to resolve the reasons for refusal. And really this application is the result of those discussions. So it's a full application with the access using existing drop curbs off East Street. There will be a demolition of existing single-storey annex to gain access into the rear of the site to create a low-level dormitory-style bungalow, which sits centrally within the plot itself, approximately 8 metres off either boundaries, 9 metres off this boundary, such that it proposes a satisfactory relationship to surrounding residential properties. There are no objections from the Highway Authority, and consequently, officers' views that the proposal has addressed the previous reasons for refusal. And whilst it's regrettable always to see the loss of open gardens, etc., the garden isn't afforded any specific protection in policy terms or under the village design statement. And our view is that the proposal on balance is judged to be acceptable, Chairman. Accordingly, we're recommending the application be approved. Happy to answer any questions, but I'll literally run through the photographs if that's okay. Clearly, this is the views from this to the rear. This is the application property. This is taken approximately from where the existing dwelling is proposed. It's a large open garden area. I'll hand back to you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Eamon. We have two speakers. First of all, Mr. Gidley, who's against the application. Over to you, sir. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Gidley, and I am a Chartered Town Planner on behalf of the neighbour. This is the 4th application for a very similar backland development, and after the last refusal just 6 months ago, it would have been reasonable for the council to refuse to validate this application. There's been no change in circumstances to warrant a different decision, and the officer's recommendation has come as a shock. The proposed development remains contrary to all the same local and national planning policies quoted in the previous decision notice. To do a 180-degree turn now with a contradictory decision would completely undermine the public's confidence in the planning system. The officer seeks to draw a distinction by describing the proposal as a modest development. There is nothing modest about a 15-metre long dwelling that's over 7.5 metres high and is almost 3,000 square foot in floor area. It's double the size of an average 4-bedroom detached dwelling. In fact, it is larger than the existing house at circa 2,400 square feet and larger than the previously refused 2 bungalows at less than 2,700 square feet in combined total floor area. And these were only 4.5 metres high. It would clearly be a massive monstrosity, injuring the amenity of people's back gardens. Housing land supply remains at 6.9 years at the current time. The proposed development thus continues to fail to meet any of the required exceptional criteria outlined in policy R1 of the adopted core strategy. Previous reason for refusal 2 therefore remains valid in its entirety. On balance, the benefit of an additional dwelling to land supply therefore carries negligible weight. As evident by the sketch green circle in my plan, 8 to 14 East Street form a distinctive group of dwellings that sit in capacious plots with extensive rear gardens. The proposed development will be completely out of character to the existing settlement pattern described, being an incongruous backland development that would adversely harm local distinctiveness and the form, verdant character and setting of this part of the village and these 4 distinguishable dwellings. Members can take great comfort that the previous reason for refusal 1 has been upheld many times by inspectors at appeal, because it is contrary to local plan policies SP1, RA1, EMV1 and EMV10 and paragraphs 9, 122, 127 and 130 of the MPPF. Despite better proposals than this one, I have lost 3 appeals on the same issue in less than 12 months. So it is a robust reason to refuse permission. I've always thought Devonshire's Planning Committee to be fair, even when things haven't gone my way, and it has served me well over the last 20 years. Please do not let this incongruous development proposal be your legacy, and I respectfully request that planning permission be refused for the same reasons as the last application was on this site just 6 months ago. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Givley. Mr. Wayne, again, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillors, my name is Barry Wayne. I'm a Chartered Town Planner representing Mr. Shane Scrivener, the owner of the land and the premises. We have before you a full and very fair assessment of the application, and in the time available and with the officer's recommendation to permit the development, I just want to consider the objections to the application. First question is not whether it is backland development, whether it is undesirable, and the normal criteria relate to access and loss of privacy to neighbours. The access is the existing access to East Street and to the Highway Authority standards within the site. There would be parking to the Highway Authority standards and turning space. The dwelling is sited away from the common boundaries of the 2 immediate neighbours and with no windows on the side elevations. The distances from the neighbouring properties and 12 East Street satisfy your officer's interpretation of your guidelines. Your officers concur that this proposal would not warrant a refusal on grounds of overbearing or loss of light or causing undue overlooking due to the disposition of the rooms or distances between windows. Chairman, as you know, Long Buckby is not a stranger to backland development where it satisfies the above criteria. There's also a primary service village helping to deliver the strategic housing policies of the Joint Core Strategy. It also allows for limited small-scale development, which is not materially impacting on the form, character and setting of the village. This proposal conforms to those criteria. Chairman, I draw your attention to the summary of your officer's report, which sets out the reasons behind the recommendation and concludes that development proposed would be in a suitable location, having regard to your policies, and that it would not harm the character and appearance of the site and surrounding area. I would respectfully request that you follow your officer's advice and approve the application subject to the conditions as set out. Finally, Chairman, I can't let this go without thanking you and the committee and officers for the attention that I've had from applications that I've involved in over the years. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. In fact, I thank both of the speakers. I know both of them, obviously, over the years. Mr. Wayne worked here 30 years ago, and Mr. Gidley I've met many times on many applications. So thank you to both of you. Right, I'm the local member. Oh dear. My first thought when I came to council was that I certainly didn't like it. But in the back of my mind, there's another case in Long Buckby that was reversed from officers' decisions and was allowed on appeal, which quite perplexed me actually. I thought that was solid. But until I heard the presentation, I didn't quite realise that the house, the proposed building in an undesirable, in my opinion, backland position, was as large as it is. The parish council clearly object to it for a few reasons. One of them was highway. I can see why it doesn't matter whether they object on highway reasons. The highway is happy with that. But I personally, it looks to me like it's the start of something else that's going to happen on another in the future applications that's going to come in, to be quite honest. But there we don't judge on that. It would be wrong of me, after hearing what I've heard, that it's the size that it is, and it has housing all around, and you can't enter this site without part of the existing house being demolished. Okay, it's a side extension, but it's got to be demolished, which it has permission. I accept that. But it's got to be demolished to get this car in. It's a substantial house already, and the house they want to build is even larger. So to cut it short, because the meeting is long, I propose that the application be refused for the previous reasons that the two bungalows were refused for. Do I have a seconder? I can see a hand, but that was up beforehand. Is there a seconder, Tony?
Yeah, Councillor Ritchie, I believe, is wanting to second.
Councillor Ritchie?
You're muted, Councillor Ritchie.
Councillor Ritchie, you wish to...
Beg your pardon. Yes, it is correct. Although I don't think I have much to add to what the chair has said. My concern is largely over the size of this particular house. If this was a small, modest bungalow, then I could accept that the concerns would not be nearly as great.
Thank you. Now, I've got to get the members in order that they came in. I know Councillor James came in early, so over to you next, Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, when the last planning application came up, I did vote against it. And I voted against it because I'm very familiar with this block of houses and this location. My uncle Denny Letts built 8 and 10 and probably built 1 or 2 of the others along that road too. And I've stayed in number 8 for many an evening, so I know it very well indeed. And I thought, well, that road is very busy. To have 2 properties in the back garden there coming off using that entrance was probably pushing it, bearing in mind there's a junction, a road junction immediately opposite. And that was my sole reason for voting against approval of that application. But now, of course, it has come forward and it is only for 1 dwelling. And I really can't see how we could possibly vote against this proposal and get away with it if it went to appeal. I think we'd be on very sticky ground indeed. There is plenty of space at the back there for a dwelling. The traffic hazard is diminished because there'll be only that dwelling going down there instead of 2 as previously, showing that access. And of course it is, I know that if you go up the road a bit, you're in open countryside. I must say that and get that point in, but that's by the by, because this entire area is surrounded by housing. It's a built up area now. And to be honest, I was quite surprised when that block was included in the conservation area. Although I certainly didn't raise the point at the time, I thought old Uncle Danny'd be chuffed to bits. He would be most surprised that he wanted to conserve those properties. But anyway, that's another matter. So I'm quite happy with this application this time round. I think that the point has been made. We had our opposition to something which we didn't consider was suitable for this site. Now I think we ought to be big enough to look at the facts as they are and go with officers' advice on this one and approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. I will come back to you in a minute, planning officer, when I've taken a couple of members. Councillor Irving Swift.
Yes, Councillor James says something, and I was trying to check. Is it in the new conservation area? Because if it is, we should do like a Clipston, and it should be reconsidered in view that now number 12 will be in the conservation area. So I think that should be thrown out because we need to apply the same things. And it's what I thought. I looked and I thought I didn't see properly because it's very difficult, but it is in the conservation area. We adopted the conservation area last week at council. So therefore we need an appraisal with the conservation area. So I would propose that it's differ for the reason, the same reason than we had for Clipston. Thank you. If my assumption is correct, I would like clarification via the officer, please.
Okay. My internet connection is unstable as well. So, officer, can you clarify, is it in the conservation area and in the same position as Clipston, has to be re-advertised?
Good question, Chairman. I don't know is the honest answer, because I don't think it's within a designated conservation area. My understanding is being looked at, but as to whether it's been formally designated, I'm not aware that it has, but I will check it.
It was last week voted on full council at the same time as Clipston.
The reason I can't tell you, Eamon, is because I was in the hospital, but it did go through the same time as Clipston.
Okay, I will quickly check, Chairman.
Also, one of our councillors should know as well. Our good councillor for Yalvertoft.
It was designated at full council, Chairman, but I think we're out of the 5-day call-in period as well.
But what about Clipston? Is that out of the 5-day one or not?
Yes, because they were designated at the same time.
What I would need to check, Chairman, is whether, I'm not disputing that the conservation area has been designated. The question will be whether or not the site lies within the conservation area. Just bear with me.
Okay.
I think he does. If I read correctly the things, I think he does. But I don't know Longbugby well enough to. But David James seems to know better, and he thinks it belongs to the conservation area now. So I think, could we defer it for that reason, so you have time to check instead of doing it very quickly? I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. Except tonight when we spoke about Clipston being deferred, and I didn't check Longbugby. I should have done before. Sorry, Chairman.
Well, I think if we can get an answer from the officer tonight, it will be right to make a decision. Can you get an answer tonight, Eamon, or do you need to defer it?
You're muted, Eamon. Eamon, you're muted.
Can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
I would need to check the area, Chairman. It's not quite possible. We can pull it up on the current screen. So if you wish, I mean, you've got a proposition to refuse the application, and members wish to take that on board and refuse the application, then the question of whether it's a designated conservation area or not would be a further material consideration. If you're asking for technical reasons that it should be deferred in order to allow it to be advertised as affecting the setting of a listed building, then I'm quite happy for members to take that decision as well.
As a local member, I would not want the decision any different from the decision we made at Clipston.
So,
if it's right for Clipston, it's right for Buckby. If it's wrong for Clipston, it's wrong for Longbugby. Okay? That's
Chairman,
the way I see it.
Chairman.
Sorry, Chairman. If you go on the website and you type Longbugby Conservation Area, you have the map, and in the map you can see what is. But I don't know. I think it is in the conservation area because it's in the yellow bits.
Chairman, just again through you, Chairman, I'm advised that it's within the site. In which case, then I would be quite happy for the application to be deferred to enable the technical requirements and statutory requirements of advertising it prior to determination to be carried out.
Well, I will withdraw the proposal then, and I would like it, let's say, done to the book. Let's leave it like that.
If it helps members, I can share. Hopefully, I can share the boundary map which I've managed to find before. So just bear with me. I'll just see if I can share it. Oh, where's my screen? So this is the proposed conservation area, looking at sort of the site, if I recall, if I believe it's this site here. Is that right?
I can't see where you are.
So if I see if I can zoom in.
You're virtually opposite Berryfields in East Street.
So is it that site there, if I recall?
I can't see the pointer too clear. Do it again. That looks, yeah, that's the one you had the with the great big garden right opposite. That's it. That's the one.
So it looks like to me the yellow hatched area is within the designated confines.
Right.
Or the conservation area. I'll just stop sharing my screen now.
Chairman, as with Clipstead, you have no option but to defer to allow it to be advertised as required under statute.
Thank you. I wouldn't want to push anything else because it would be unreasonable after we've done the same thing for another village. So that should be exactly the same. So committee, are you happy then that that is deferred for the same reason as Clipston to be advertised as properly? All those, put a hand up in front of you if you're happy with that. Okay, anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay, that will happen then. That will be re-advertised, same as Clipston. Thank you. We move on then from Long Buckby. I'm gonna get the next one in. I hope I've got it right. Is it Pittsford next?
It is.
It is indeed, yeah. Okay, officers, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just share my screen. Members may recall this site from last year, in which members resolved to refuse an application for a single-storey extension and a porch because the extension had an impact on sort of the adjoining neighbour here. They appealed against the decision, which was dismissed because pretty much it would have a detrimental impact on number 63, which was here. As a result of that dismissal appeal, the applicants have gone away and had a look and have come back with a revised scheme, which now accords with the 60-degree raw angle. So this is the proposal now before you. It's for pretty much a flat roof with a very, very slight slope, which falls away. The previous application was pretty much here, built along the boundary here. The extension comes out 4 meters to this point here. So it's to increase sort of the family living room and also have a guest bedroom as well as a hobby area here. And of course the porch here. The materials have changed slightly. If I go back to the elevations, so these are the proposed elevations for the scheme. So it's a flat roof. Overall, we consider that the proposal meets or overcomes the appeal decision. It is noted that the neighbour still objects, but however, it is now in line with our supplementary planning guidance of 60 degrees, and therefore have recommended it for approval. So I have got the previous scheme here so you can see the difference. In addition, the height has slightly been reduced, so it was up to 3.3 on this one, but it's now down to just over 2.9. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Catherine. We have 3 speakers. First of all, Mr. Matthew, who's against the application. Mr. Matthew, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to object to the proposed revised scheme for number 65 High Street. I appreciate the plans have been changed slightly, but in my opinion, it is not materially different from the original proposal that was unanimously refused by Daventry District Councillors, the Parish Council, and dismissed through the appeal process that was lodged following your previous decision. The revised scheme shows the extension depth still exceeds permitted development of 4 metres, and the eaves height has now actually increased by nearly half a metre from the original plan. In my opinion, this does not show that concerns have been addressed and impacts upon neighbouring occupiers have been reduced, as the planning officer states. Although minor changes have been made to appease the 60-degree rule, no further effort has been made to reduce massing and overshadowing. The scale of the proposal would still adversely affect the outlook, daylight and sunlight currently enjoyed at our property to an unacceptable level. Due to the location of our property being on the left of number 65 with a southeast facing rear garden, sunlight from around midday onwards would be blocked from our lounge and patio area. The planning inspector noted that if an extension with permitted development of 3 metres was built, its effect on outlook would be materially less, but by projecting 4 metres would significantly extend across the outlook of the adjacent living room of number 63, which is the main habitable room. For this reason, he concluded that the proposed development would unacceptably harm the living conditions of the occupiers of number 63. This would be contrary to policies ENV 10 and RA2 of the Settlement and Countryside Local Plan Part 2 for Daventry District, which seek to prevent such harm. I believe this still applies to the revised scheme. I would also like to add that recent extensions in the High Street have been submitted with the proposed build being on the garage side of the adjoining properties to minimise any impact on adjoining neighbours. This has set a precedent over recent years. However, the design of this proposal has an opposite effect, with the extension extending to 3 metres on the left side near the non-attached neighbour, but increasing to 4 metres on the right, which adjoins our property. After noting concerns made by some councillors regarding validity of Photoshop images during the last meeting, I have not included any photos this time, but am concerned it can be difficult to appreciate the impact from the plans alone. Therefore, I would be grateful if you would take into account the observations made by the planning inspector and parish councillors who have actually carried out a site visit. My final concern is that if the extension of this extreme scale should be approved, this automatically gives the right to the homeowners in the High Street to extend the same scale. This has the potential to cause further harm to the outlook of these properties should neighbours on both sides wish to take up this entitlement. We'd be most grateful if you consider these concerns and the overbearing impact this application would have on our living area and the previous concerns of potential overdevelopment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matthew. Mrs. Holiday, Parish Council. Mrs. Holiday? If you're there, you must be muted.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, this is a row of semi-detached houses, 12 of them joined by garages. Through past development, it's been demonstrated that all of the properties along this left-hand side of High Street have taken into consideration the matter of loss of light on their neighbours and likely overbearing nature of their plans to extend. Many extensions have been on the garage side. The garages adjoin each other, and in pairs next to 65 is 67 and 69. 67 has an extension on the garage and dining room on the garage side. 71 and 73, they have a 3 metres on the garage side and only 2.13 on the side adjoining 73. And 73 has a small glazed conservatory. 75 and 77 have very small flat roof shared extensions under 4 metres. All of the above predate planning records on the website. The most recent applications, 2012s, are 81 and 83. And the response from the planning officers to these was very stiff. 81 has an annex extension on the garage side and a small glazed conservatory. 83 has an extension on the garage side. Being at the top of the street, the position of the properties reduces overshadowing and overbearing nature of any extension. All of these extensions are under 4 metres in depth. Noting the appeal inspector's comments, if the extension were to be built at 3 metres depth, it could be built under permitted development rights and with SPG. At a depth of 2.904, the extension would line up flush with the garage extension alongside, making it flush all the way along. The eaves height should be no higher than the previous suggested 2.5 metres and a flat roof. The parish council has objected twice to this overall depth and height, the rear extension, and agree wholeheartedly with the appeal officer's judgment that the 3 metres and 2.5 metre height is adequate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Holly. Next speaker is Mr. Stanford Jones, who's for the application.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, thank you for your time today. I shall be representing the applicants as they've just welcomed a new daughter into their family. Their statement reads, "We believe the revised plans presented today provide a fair and reasonable compromise to all parties and hope to detail how these plans mitigate the concerns raised, focusing specifically on the three concerns raised in the consultation response. Point 1, the slope design at the eaves edge of the roof has been removed. At this point, the previous eaves height was 2.5 metres. The new eaves height is 2.9 metres. Our response, we acknowledge the eaves height is higher. However, 3 of the 4 metres now have a reduced roof height. The overall roof height has been adjusted to address the concerns over outlook and dropped from 3.3 to 2.9 metres at rear elevation. The concerns raised do not consider the drop made to the design over the first 3 metres outwards, which as a result has necessitated the removal of the double pitch design at the last metre. We believe this offers a significant reduction to impact of the overall proposal, all of which is now under the 3 metre permitted development height. Point 2, the depth of the lounge extension is unchanged at 4 metres and protrudes 1 metre deeper than the adjoining playroom side extension. Our response, although the depth of the extension remains unchanged, we have brought the extension in from the boundary by 60 centimetres, which significantly reduces the impact on outlook. Crucially, this also means that the design no longer breaches the 60-degree rule. Point 3, the suggestion is this would cause loss of light and overshadowing to number 63. Our response, the previous appeal concluded there was no significant adverse effect regarding loss of light. Their report reads, as the proposed extension would be on the southwestern side of number 63, it would result in some overshadowing of the adjacent ground floor habitable room during the latter half of the day. However, as the rear elevations of numbers 63 and 65 face to the southeast and so towards the sun for a significant part of the day, this would not be great enough to have a significant adverse effect on levels of sunlight or daylight. So, in summary, we feel that this proposal is considerate and reasonable. We have reduced the height of the roof for the first 3 metres, meaning all of it is now below the 3 metre permitted development height, brought in the extension from the boundary by 60 centimetres, no longer breached the 60-degree rule, and with the previous appeal noting no significant adverse effects on sunlight or daylight, we believe this allays the concerns raised and provides a sufficient compromise. Additionally, the size of plot lends itself to development. Ground floor habitable space equates to under 1/12 of the entire plot. The back garden is 36 metres deep from the rear of the house by just under 12 metres wide. As such, we feel a 4 metre extension is considerate on this scale. Finally, and on a personal note, the applicants love the village and wish to accommodate their growing family there. Larger family homes are desired in the village, so it seems logical to ensure homeowners can make the most of their properties and their plots, in this case sizable, not only for today, but to also future-proof the properties and indeed the village for years to come. We hope you're in agreement with the recommendation to approve. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And before I open it up, I will tell you that when this application is over, we will have the 10-minute break that I was talking about at the beginning of the meeting. Right, who's the local member? Do we have the local member? Sorry, I don't have the pictures of you. I've got a hand up. Councillor Irving Swift, are you the local member? No.
Neither of the local members are present, Chairman.
Thank you, Tony. Right, Councillor Irving Swift, you're indicating you'd like to speak. Over to you.
Yes, please. I tried to figure out what was the difference with the previous application, and I have difficulty because in terms of scale, it's pretty similar to the other. So would it be possible for the planning officer to share with us what is truly the difference? Because I think it's very important and I could not understand the difference. And also the applicant or the person who spoke for the applicant said about the length of the garden, but it doesn't matter the length of the garden because of the linear nature of the thing. So I am more interested. I tried to figure out what was the big difference and I couldn't see
it. Thank you, Councillor Irving Swift. I will ask the officer. Officer, can you answer that?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Chairman. This is the previous scheme. So if I first of all just go on the layout plans, so you can see how the previous came right up abutting the boundary. So it did not accord with the 60-degree rule, which is one of the concerns raised by the planning inspectorate. The current application has been set in 600 millimetres from the edge, so it's no longer abutting it. Now, if I can scroll in, you can see where the 60-degree rule line has been drawn, showing the potential impact on the neighbouring, which is part of our supplementary planning guidance. And it's about 354 millimetres within the 60-degree. Now, if I go back, scroll back out and go onto the elevations. So this is what was proposed previously. So you can see it's a flat roof, then it's 3.3 to this point here. Then it dropped down for the last, if I recall, the last metre to about 2.5 metres here to the eave side. Now the proposal, if I go back to the elevations, if I get the right one, hopefully I'll get the right one. You can see is just now a flat roof, which has got a very, very slight sloping roof, obviously to help with the rain water goods coming off, but it's pretty much a flat roof. So that has, so it's now lower at 2.9. So that's reduced the overall height.
Well, so, thank you so much for the explanation, but I still feel that as a whole, it's far too big, and I would like that we go against officer advice, because I do think the impact on the neighbor is still, and let the planning inspector, I know the 60-meter rule, but it's so marginal. The impact of that wall and the height is still the same that we had when we saw the first planning application, but thank you so much. It has moved a bit, but for me, not enough. Thank you so much. So I propose to go against officer advice.
Can you give me the planning reason, Councillor Owen-Swift?
Sorry, it's sorry. It's still like the same time. The scheme is far too oppressive for the neighbours.
Is that a clear enough planning reason, officer, or not?
I'm sure the officer will be able to put.
Yeah.
Now, sort of having a look at the appeal decision, which I've got before me.
Yeah, I know.
Sort of, because obviously they didn't raise loss of light as an issue, but what they did raise concerns was the adverse effect it would have on the outlook at number 63. So, and it would unacceptably harm the living conditions of the occupiers at number 63, contrary to EMV 10 and RA2.
I do think it's still the same reason, because of the linear, when you look at all the other neighbors, it's linear. So regardless how long the garden is, it's a linear road thing. So I will go with the same reason as you said. And I know it's marginal, but I do find the applicant didn't go enough in the reduction of his scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, do you have a seconder? Councillor Smith. Sorry? Councillor Smith, I've got as a seconder. Councillor Smith?
Yeah, I've got nothing to add to that yet. EMV 10 and RA2, absolutely.
Okay. Right, I've got a member wishing to speak, which is Councillor James. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. The last time this application came before us in its original form, I voted against it, precisely because I thought the massing, the height of it, and that it overbeared on the next door neighbour. But of course, since then, there's been a reduction, considerable reduction really in the height of it, and it's now been made to conform to the 60-degree rule. I really can't see any reason for objecting to it any longer, because particularly view of the length of the garden of both the neighbour and this garden too. In fact, this could be turned round to advantage. It provides an element of privacy for the next door neighbour, and who knows, perhaps one day the occupant of that property may wish to extend likewise. So there are a number of options available. It's not unfavourable as it was before, I think. So, you know, I'm prepared to accept officers' advice on this one. It does look straightforward, considering some of the extensions that have come before us in recent months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. Any more speakers? I can't see any.
None indicated, Chairman.
Right, if there's none indicated, we're going to a vote. We have a proposal that the application be refused for the given reasons, which has been seconded. All those in favour, tell Marina in a second. Over to you, Marina, for the count.
Okay. Councillor Chandler.
Again.
Councillor Cribbin.
Against.
Councillor Dabbs.
Against.
Councillor Frost.
For.
Councillor Harris.
Abstain.
Councillor Irving Swift.
For.
Councillor James.
Against.
Councillor Matton. Councillor Matton.
Apologies. Against. Thank you.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Ritchie.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Wesley.
Against.
Six against. Yeah. 6 against, 5 for, and 1 abstention, Chair.
Right, the application, yeah, but well, that proposition fails then. So I need another proposition then, please. Councillor James?
Yeah, I propose that we go with officers' advice on this one.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder?
Councillor Chandler, Chairman.
Sorry, I didn't hear that, Tony.
Councillor Chandler.
Yes, I've got it. Thank you. Councillor Chandler. Now, you wish to say anything, Councillor Chandler?
Nothing to add, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, if there's nothing else to be said, we'll go straight to the vote. All those in favour, please tell Marina now.
Okay. Councillor Chandler.
For.
Councillor Cribbin.
For.
Councillor Dabbs.
For.
Councillor Frost.
Against.
Councillor Harris.
Abstain.
Councillor Irving Swift.
Against.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Matton.
For.
Councillor Parker.
Against.
Councillor Ritchie.
Against.
Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor Wesley.
For.
6 in favour, 5 against, 1 abstention, Chair. So carried.
Right, the application is approved. Right, we will now have a 10-minute break. And when I say 10 minutes, I mean 10 minutes. We'll be back here and starting on the next application in 10 minutes' time. So have you come for break now?